We both things off with cricket on this edition of the SportsMax Zone. The West Indies went down to England by a massive 108 runs in the first Women's One-Day International in Derby earlier on Friday as the hosts took a 1-0 lead in the three-match series. Player of the match, Amy Jones, carved a shot-filled 122 to notch her first international ton on her return to the top of the order. Jones' knock was half of a pair of centuries from the English openers, with Tammy Beaumont scoring her 11th in the format, 107, setting England up for their highest total against the West Indies, 345 for 6 from their allotment. Hayley Matthews, 2 for 49, and Afi Fletcher, 2 for 65, were the pick of the Windies bowlers. Now, the Caribbean side began their chase with a strong opening stand of their own, with Kiana Joseph, 62, and Matthews, 48, putting on 91 for the first wicket. But the only other contribution of note came from Ali Elaine, who made 44 as the Windies conceded the chase at the hands of debutant Lindsay Smith, 5 for 36. To be dismissed for 237 in 48.2 overs. Now, England's winning captain, Nat Silverbrunt, was pleased with the new-look opening partnership, but was left frustrated with the fielding effort. She says, "Our openers read conditions really well. It was probably a bit more difficult at the start, a bit tacky, but they set us up for a great score. We could have fielded a bit better. This outfield made it difficult at times, but we can't dip on our energy." How about the Windies skipper, Hayley Matthews? She was focused on the productive aspect of her team's performance, saying, "Really good to see Kiana Joseph, who didn't have the best start, come out like that and rectify her tour. It was a big plus for us, something we need to see more often. Still think we can take positives from today, like getting that total with so many young girls in the 11. All right, that's the roundup of what happened today. Let's get the analysis now from Nikhil Uttamchandani, who joins us via Zoom. Nikhil, certainly from the West Indies women's perspective, a much better performance than the men delivered a couple of days ago, but we're not comparing our men and women here. Can you analyze today's effort, though, from the Caribbean women?
I think Ricardo was summed up by Hayley Matthews in terms of an improvement. Obviously, it's nowhere close to where the West Indies need to be if they're to compete with the very best teams in the world in this format. But I think for the West Indies to get to 237, and even the way they started the bowling effort, the last 25 overs for me, they completely lost their way. But the way they started in the power play, only conceding 7 boundaries, keeping England to 121, albeit for none, but keeping them to 121 in 25 overs. Their control of length, the ability to use conditions, I could see some positives there. But what I would say, taking away from this game, for me, it was, I would have loved to see a Deandra Dottin and Chanel Henry and Stephanie Taylor in this team. West Indies at full strength with, first of all, a few more potent new ball bowlers, but then also, given the platform and start they got from the openers, and then Alia Aline at the end. I would have loved to see if, at full strength, this batting lineup could have potentially got much closer to that total.
Yeah, of course. We've struggled to be at full strength for some time now. Either one player is retired or another is injured or a few are injured, whatever the case might be. But it's really been a struggle for the Caribbean side. Here's an interesting question for you, Nikhil, and I have a follow-up, so be careful how you answer this one. What do you make of Hayley Matthews as a captain, and specifically now speaking to when the team is out in the field?
How do I put this? I think, look, she's still very much a learning captain. I've seen enough in her leadership abilities evolve and the evolution over the years to know that she's the perfect person for the job. I still think there are times where, and this is just, again, I don't think I'm in the best position. I'm not in the position of Shane Dietz, the head coach, or Hayley, who's on the field. But there are times where maybe we feel, and me personally feels, that maybe she can be a bit more inventive with her captaincy. At times, her bowling decisions, maybe some field settings as to put pressure on teams like today when you've got 2 openers, they're set both getting to hundreds. But I think all in all, her communication, the messaging she's put out, and then most importantly, the way she's taken on the role and responsibility and it's almost boosted her game on the field. I think I've seen all the qualities that make me think she can be one of the very best leaders.
Yeah, I give you two examples, and I want you to analyze them for me from today's match. At the start of the encounter, England electing to bat overcast conditions, and I'm thinking to myself, you would at least want to utilize a few of your seam bowlers up top. Personally, I know that Zayda James has been opening the bowling with success in the T20 format of the game, but I felt given the conditions that maybe, just maybe, this morning was not the best time, and maybe utilizing two seamers up front might have given the Caribbean side more of an opportunity to nick a wicket or two. As it turned out, took a long time for us to get one. And then the introduction of Karishma Ramarak, who has been one of our most successful bowlers in recent years, coming on as seventh change, I think, in the 29th over in a match where we were struggling to take wickets.
Yeah, we've spoken about the Ramarat point at length, and there obviously must be a reason. I've actually found that, and this is not just a Haley Matthews thing, I think all the coaching staff, because they would plan extensively going into games as to which bowlers bowl where, what's plan A, what's plan B. But I think about someone like Alia Aline, I think about Ramarat at the qualifiers. There seems to be a very set, structured, and stringent plan that the West Indies like to follow. And at times I just feel, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know based on the evidence, Haley will feel like maybe she needs control in the power play. She's trying to contain these two very aggressive batters, trying to put pressure on them, so she goes to reliable options. But maybe, and especially given that we're not in the next World Cup, I think your point and piece of what I'm saying is maybe we can be a bit more inventive and be a bit more ruthless and aggressive. So someone like Alia Aline, who we saw in Pakistan, have the ability to hold her length and get some sideways movement. Maybe she is one that I would have liked to see today with that newer ball, especially that Fraser wasn't at her best. And yeah, Ramarat, I think we've spoken at length as to we would love to see her into the attack in both formats a bit earlier.
Yeah. And, you know, Nikhil, one of the things I want to ask you about, because I paid close attention to what Haley said after the match, because I always wonder, you know, when you keep losing matches, what are the captains going to say? You know, sometimes it could be really tough for them when asked about the team and the loss. One of the things she keeps repeating in these press conferences is about the youth within the setup, and that, you know, she's proud of the team because it's a bunch of youngsters trying to do their best against a really good England team. Last time, again, she said, you know, you can't expect a young squad like this to, of course, you know, defeat a team that is a top-class team. What do you make of that comment? Because I look at it too, and I started to feel the same, if I'm being honest. A young Zayda James, you have a Jazara Claxton. It's just a bunch of youngsters trying their best to survive.
I think what she's telling West Indian cricket fans is be patient and potentially let's lower our expectations. Look, the past is the past. What's gone is gone. Obviously, the West Indies will not be in the next major 50-over event. And I think the approach that Cricket West Indies and the coaching staff are taking now in terms of just starting over. Look, Stefanie Taylor is still around for her leadership. I'm sure Dottin and Henry will come back in when fit. But let's expose the next generation as much as possible. And Mariah, the one thing that's keeping me optimistic about this approach is to see the growth of Zayda James. At 20 years old, in 2 years of international cricket, to see what she's become. And don't get me wrong, nowhere close to a finished product and nowhere close to fulfilling the potential we've seen from her. But just to see the ability to now be a reliable new ball option for the West Indies, her economy's come down drastically in the last 12 months, and then the ability to bat at 3 and sort of be in multiple roles with bat in hand throughout the formats. I think if she can improve that way, then I say let's give Jazara Claxton with her slower deliveries and her ability to hit the seam 2 years. Let's give Mandy Mangru with her sweeps 2 years. Let's give Shadvika Gajnabi, who I think can offer a lot to the West Indies with her all-round ability. And look, let's build towards the next 50-over event, because what other choice do you have? You're not in this upcoming major event.
Yeah. Another player that I want to pinpoint is Kiana Joseph. And Kiana sometimes makes me so happy, and then at most times she makes me so upset. And I'm looking at Kiana Joseph today and I'm saying to myself, this girl is so talented. You know, But one of the things, Nikhil, and it's a narrative that we've discussed in West Indies cricket, the inconsistency. Because can you imagine a consistent Kiana Joseph next to Hayley Matthews putting on the runs on the board so that when the middle order comes, and don't get me wrong, the middle order continues to suffer as well, it's a lot easier for them.
Mariah, if you guys permit me, I wanted to send a message to Kiana Joseph. Kiana, what we've seen in the last 12 months, I think about the World Cup semi-final, I think about days like this, you've got an immense talent and ability. The world to me is your oyster. When I think about the women's PL and all the money to be made in women's cricket now, I can't see a way of them stopping you. And I hope days like today are lesson learning days for you, because the way that you went through your innings, run a ball in the power play, 4 boundaries, the normal aggressive type. But then when Hayley got out, the understanding that the responsibility was immense and to come down a few gears and be able to bat sensibly. But look, I think when we think about Kiana Joseph's game and we think about her leg side dominance, I want to see if she can take a few months, a few weeks, well, hopefully not a year, but in quick time, maybe enhance her offside game. I just think if Kiana Joseph can, 1, work on her fitness, and 2, work on her offside game, and maybe even some bowling in due course, the world will be Kiana Joseph's oyster. Teams are crying out for the left-handed, powerful opening type that she is. Yeah, I think the upside is huge for Kiana Joseph. The only question I would ask is, how bad does she want it?
Yeah, Nicola, I'm going to put 2 things on the plate that you can comment on, because to me they sort of highlight the difference between this emerging England team, because they are rebuilding, and the West Indies team struggling. Lindsay Smith was on debut today and she took a 5 for debut in ODI cricket, and she took a 5 for. At the same time, when the West Indies are pointing to the fact that they have so many inexperienced players in their team, so that's why they aren't able to get the results. But isn't this an illustration that we really are far, far behind England?
And more illustration of the disparity in the systems, because one thing Charlotte Edwards lamented when she came in, Lance, was, I want to reward and continue to strengthen the domestic structure, the regional setup, which is picking the best players that perform in the One Day Cup, in the Blast, and that's what she's done. I mean, Smith is a perfect example. There are a few senior players that have been dropped from the team. Maya Boucher is a great example, who was comfortable in the England setup. New coach comes in and says, no, we're going to change up the mantle. But I say that to say it all is about the system that you have beneath your national team. And it's why you're spot on. Both teams are quite inexperienced. Both teams are going through a transition. But look at the difference. I mean, the way even after the platform of the openers, the way that Siva Brunt and Capsey batted in the middle. Capsey's 21. But what is the disparity between Alice Capsey and some of the other 20-year-olds in the West Indies? So look, it's a long way to go to make up that gap. But it comes down to to the system in place.
Yeah, and the other point I wanted to make is that Amy Jones, well, I know she's 31, so she's not inexperienced, but her opening the batting today was experimental, and she made 100. So it just tells you that England have tools to work with, and sadly, the West Indies aren't in that position.
Not only that, I look at a move like that. I look at yesterday for Jamie Smith to open the batting for England. One thing about them is, and again, this is not the way every coach or captain will want to play, but they're fearless, and they don't like to say baseball trickles down, but for some reason it's intertwined. They're bold, and look, sometimes they'll come out of tournaments like 2023 or the Champions Trophy and lose badly, but other times like 2019, they'll really challenge you. And you think back to some of England's triumphs with Charlotte Edwards involved. The team that I see now, the hunger, the youth that I see, I think they could really be a force. Give them 12 months and a few major tournaments. I think they could get back to right up there with the Aussies and maybe even India as a force in world women cricket.
Yeah, I just want to go back quickly to the Kiana Joseph point, Nikhil. Because I think in many ways the jury is still out on Kiana Joseph, and we speak about the inconsistencies in her performances, and she is inconsistent for a reason, or for a number of reasons. One reason is certainly with a bat having to do with her technical ability. There's the other issue of, I guess, her fitness. I watched her closely in the field today, and almost every time the ball went to her, and even when it was straight to her, there was a missed field, and there was an opportunity for a single, and there should have been none. And I say those things not to be disrespectful in any way, but because I think they are facts. And I guess where I'm trying to go is then, how do you improve on those things? Because if you don't, then I don't think her performances will become consistent. And although she has the capability of hitting the ball well and clearing the boundary rope, I just still feel the jury's out.
And that's understandable, Ricardo. And I want to clarify something for the viewers, right? People have said and will say Ricardo has brought up Kiana Joseph's name quite often on this show. And the reason that we talk about her is because there's something there. And we want to see the full evolved product of Kiana Joseph. And the reason I wanted to send that message to her earlier, Ricardo, is because I feel there has to be a lot. We can talk about system, we can talk about coaching, but there has to be a certain level of responsibility placed on the player. And it's why I'm challenging Kiana Joseph. When the women's CPL comes around, I want to see what her offside game looks like. I want to see what her fitness looks like. When she made the West Indies team, she was bowling. So is it a case now that she's set, she's gotten scores, she's performed on the biggest stages of them all, that she's comfortable now? And then again, I go back to the system. How can you create a competition for places so that she feels that she needs to continue to get better so that she's not really guaranteed a place? I mean, Zeta James herself opened the batting at the qualifiers and did well. So I think it's a twofold, but more of the responsibility is on the player herself, especially in this case. I can't begin to imagine when I think about Gail and I think about Hayley Matthews in the WPL, what Kiana Joseph can do in the world game if she rectifies a few small things.
Yeah, well, I guess where we will part, Nikhil, is that I don't think a few of the things are small, but I'll leave that there. Tell you what, it was a magnificent IPL game today, the eliminator, and after the break, we are going to be talking about that. Sherfane Rutherford, well, he was in position to try and win it for the Gujarat Titans, but the quality of bowling displayed by the Mumbai Indians at the back end, yeah, they did the damage. They did the trick. We'll be chatting about that. Nikhil stays after the break. Stay with us.